everyone, it's Lisa and Luna from Don't Run with Scissors, back with another Technique Tuesday. Today is part 3 in our colored pencil series, and we are focusing strictly on white colored pencils. Although I will deviate real quick because I do want to show you something else that I forgot to in the other videos. So in front of me I have 3 of the original colored pencil, wax colored pencils. I have a Prismacolor, I have a Spectrum Noir, and I have, and this one, the little teeny one, is a Sargent Art, which is a Hobby Lobby brand for the wax. And then I have a watercolor pencil from white from the Hobby Lobby Sargent Art collection. So the first thing I want to do, because I do need to put it aside, is this card here. I'm not quite sure if it's just going to be a hi, how are you card or a happy birthday card. We'll see what happens when I have all the color finally put down. But what I did do is I took some flowers that I had and I lined it up with my piece of vellum that I did cut out using a Thinlit die. Lined it up, essentially it'd be this way if you're looking at it, so that they all fit on my acrylic block, and then flipped it over and stamped it, and used white embossing powder to, real quick, if you are using vellum, sometimes it's a good idea to heat from underneath so you're not blowing things around, depending on how delicate your image is. This one is, it's a scribbly one, so it really didn't matter too much which way I embossed it, top or bottom, but it is an option to emboss from the bottom. So, because it is vellum, and I am going to be using a watercolor on this, I'm going to tape it down just to keep it nice and safe so that the paper doesn't absorb any of the water and curl when it's done drying. So I have some Post-it tape here. Just going to tag that down. This takes really no time. The setup's probably the longest part in the end. And I'm going to really only watercolor the big flower, so I'm going to take my white watercolor pencil and shade in these flowers real quick. This really doesn't take much time to do. The drying time is pretty quick. You can also heat set it if you really need to. I do need to sharpen this eventually. Okay, so those are all done. Because I'm using a purple pink card, I'm going to just highlight these other flowers real quick before I get to the watercolor part, just to add some color. The stamps didn't leave too much room to play with in here. And when you are coloring, the embossing powder, when it's all hardened and all that, the color will stick to it. So you need to be careful when you're coloring. Color in the lines. You know, instead of the warning, don't run with scissors, this one's color in the lines. And I'll go in with a little bit of the pink. Just to pop it a little bit. Okay, so what we didn't talk about the last time is another thing that you can do with colored pencils, and it's a transfer. It's very easy to do. I just decided to do the stems in the middle of talking, so finish that. And we'll go down. Add a little bit of color. Okay. So the transfer is taking your water brush, and I'm going to make sure that it's clean on a scrap piece of paper. This technique, because of what we're doing and we're on vellum, I don't need a lot of water. So all I need to do is I'm going to take the pink crayon first, and all I need to do is wet the tip of this colored pencil. You will transfer color right in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color and I'm going to go right over the white. Now remember, you have the white colored pencil down, so it's going to start blending and melting in with that white, and it's going to produce this nice opaque color in there, and it actually dries really nice and bright. So depending on how bright or how light you want it is how much color you need to bring in with you. I recommend that you do not squeeze the barrel of this because you don't want a whole waterlogged mess. The vellum will curl. The vellum curls when you die cut it, so be careful with that. It flattens out eventually, no worries. But not when you have the water in there, it gets all crinkly. It's gonna get crinkly as it is. So I have the pink down. Now I wanna go in and do some purple. I'm gonna give this a squeeze just because it kind of has dried itself out. Brush that off, color pencil's good. And I'm just gonna add some highlight streaks. Nothing too crazy. Just to give it an artsy look. Yeah, that's a lot of purple right there. You don't need to go back. Steal some. You can steal color from other petals or the pencil. Apparently I'm going to be doing it from the petals. This one's all really bright. Okay. And I'm going to set this aside to dry. I like everything else. I can soften the green a little bit here. Okay, so we're going to put that aside to dry. It essentially is done. I will adhere it to this and decide if it's a happy birthday or something later. So let's give you a quick sneak peek here how the shading went. And when we pull this off, you'll see, because it'll dry pretty quickly before the end of the video. Okay, the next technique is actually blending a stamp using a white colored pencil. So I have the Calypso Coral Stampin' Up pad. It's a dye-based pad. And I only really want the flower. So what you can do is mask your stamp. Hide what you don't want. I would take more time if I was really going to be going through this and really spend some time hiding the stem itself, because you see it does reach up into here. But all I did was I masked the stamp with some Scotch tape. I'm going to go in, I'm going to stamp it. Get it all nice and inked up, and then come back, peel the tape off, because you don't need that anymore, and you can stamp your image. Of course, not when you have ink on your hands. So, careful with that with the Scotch tape. So there's the flower, and this part is missing. Pretty neat. So on this one, I'm going to let this ink, it is dry, but I don't feel like making a big mess because I still have ink on my hands. So we'll put that aside, because there's one other technique in the middle of all of this. I have this stamp. A lot of people don't know what to do with really large stamps. They are hard to work with because you really only get the one color. You either emboss or stamp it in. So I have a piece of craft cardstock, or as crafty color as it can be, and I did heat set this and I embossed it in white. Now, as I said in the previous one, colors will stick to this. So we're done with these. So I'm going to pull out my Spectrum Noirs colored pencils, and I'm going to take an aqua color, and you can go right over this. Again, you're going to want a fine tip, but the color will stick to the embossing powder. So you can change certain aspects of your card with a colored pencil. So these are the wax based. These work really well. I'm going to go pull a colored watercolor pencil in just so you can see it. Again, super fine tip on these because the lines are small. You will wind up on the paper if you're not so good at coloring in the lines. I'm usually guilty of that. So I'm going to grab. This is a watercolor pencil. It's a duller tip, so I'm making a mess. So we'll pick a bigger space. You can see the watercolor pencil will stick to this as well. So not necessarily something with a white colored pencil, but another way to add some depth and dimension with your colored pencils and using white. So I do want to make my birds blue. Get a blue pencil here. Color are these little guys here. Just a little shading. You could put a sentiment on there. You rub it with your finger, it will break the color down a little bit, just so it doesn't look so abrasive. If a line comes out, that shouldn't. Nice light freehand. And then you can have your card. You can put a sentiment on that. It's pretty hard to see, maybe with the glare, but you can see that the blue does stick with the birds. There's some aqua in here, and you can go harder or softer. It's just such a detailed stamp that you need to be careful, but the color does stick right in. You can definitely tell with the pink there. But you can color over embossed images, so that's another fun thing to do. Alright, we're going to go back to my stamped flower, and we'll use the Prismacolor. When you have a stamped image, what you can do is you can come back and you can highlight it. And I'm just going to color the tips of these flowers just to break the color in. There's that stem right here that I didn't want, but I didn't take the time to do it. So on this one, I colored in up here nice and thick. And what you can do now is you can take a good eraser. This is an art eraser. These ones work pretty well too, the Pentel. But you're just going to go in, you're going to lightly circular erase. And what that does is it blends that white right into the ink. And it gives you some shading on your flowers. And it provides an extra little depth and dimension to the flower. Okay, one of the next cards I'm going to do is using Whisper White pigment ink and stamping it from a Heartfelt Creations stamp here. I did stamp this ahead of time because when you are using a white pigment ink or even the StazOn white ink, what you need to do is you need to heat set it. So while they're not embossed, the color themselves, they take forever to dry and adhere. So I did stamp this in the Whisper White. I cleaned my stamp very quickly and I embossed the image so that it would stay on. So now I'm going to take my colored pencil and I'm going to go around the edges of my petals. Do remember, these aren't embossed. This is just the stamp ink that's on there. So you can, when you're coloring, you could overpower the stamp image that you don't want. So I'm trying not to press too hard, although it's not really hiding. So working on black papers, it's just a ton of fun. It brings out a whole new idea. Most people don't think to grab a piece of black paper, but you should. A whole new world can open up to you. And because of the set that I have, I'm going to be using blue. And I'm going to be blending it in. And because of the wax colored pencils, the layers just come out really, really nicely. You don't need any blending solvents. You don't need a stump, the paper stumps. You just need the color and the layering of what colors you want to use. All right, let's add some blue in here. A little bit darker. And I'll hold this up in a minute so you can see it. Very quick and easy. Don't cross black out of your list. You know what? I'm pick up a little bit of purple. And now, because it is a dark paper, you don't have to fussy color anything. You do need to add that color in. So let's hold that up. And you can see. So let's add the green in, and I'll show you how I'm going to finish this card up real quick. We'll head back to our watercolor card, and then we'll end with the fun one. So I'll do some green leaves here. You can also come in, and I do have them here on the table with me, is come in with a Wink of Stella pen or a jelly pen and add in a little highlights here and there. This is actually a clear ink. You're not going to be able to see the sparkle too much at home, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to go over these swirly lines. This is going to add some glitter, so if you're standing in front of it, you'll see it. Unfortunately, back home, I don't think you can. But this just adds a little bit to it. And I'm also going to glue down some rhinestones to the middle. Just to add it. Tweezers. Just to add a little bit of pop. I'm a pop girl. Never used to like glitter. Never used to like bows either. So there's that. Put these aside. And if you want to put a bow on it, I'll do a series on bows at some point. But it's 2 loops, whoop, swoop, and a pull. you can pull the tabs. And you have a cute little bow you can put on your card. You can add it with a dot or however you want to do that. But this card, as well as my tape runner, is done. So I'm going to pick a sentiment up of some sort. Not quite sure what it's going to be yet. But you can see the sparkle and the shine that the colored pencils gives with white and Whisper White pigment ink. So let's go back real quick to my watercolor white colored pencil. This image here, this is essentially dry. So you can see now the color that's in it. If I flip the image over, you can see the color. You can see where the paper did wrinkle a little bit. That's why we keep it nice and flat. And what I would do here is I would adhere this as well. Probably add another bow and a sentiment, maybe a happy birthday. I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll get to it. But the last thing we can do with colored pencils, and Luna has joined us, so just a heads up. Last thing you can do with colored pencils is you can do it with your kids, whatever you want to do. If you have a white crayon, it's the same thing. So you can just take a regular sheet of paper, and I can barely see what I'm drawing, so come off screen here a little bit. Here comes the cat. And you coming, and you're just gonna sit there. And you can do a hidden message. And what works is you can watercolor right over that. So we're gonna take the blue watercolor, make sure I have the right pencil, take some color off of it. Now remember, because of the colored pencil, it's a wax, the color will not stick. And once it dries, you can see the message. It's very fine. And you can, I don't know if you can make that out yet or not. It probably looks like a nice little blob. What it is, it does have a little heart and it says Luna on there, and it did resist over the wax colored pencil. So you can write with your wax colored pencil and then come over with another pencil watercolor. And just to prove it is pull out a gelato here. Any normal watercolor paints will work too. I'm just going to do a big scribble, and I'm going to break my gelato down, and you can watch the color will just whisk away once you're done, and you can see the scribble mark. So the color will resist it. You can come in with a piece of paper or paper towel and wipe that off. Unfortunately, the blue colored pencil was a little too light. But that's another fun thing you can do with your kids. You can do hidden messages. White crayons really do work the best because you can get the best coverage. Colored pencils are a little thin. But there you have it. A couple of different things you can do with white colored pencils. The blending, and the blending here with the watercolor here on your card. And then last but not least, actually coloring over embossing powders. I hope you have learned something, and next week is going to be Valentine's Day prep, so stay tuned and we'll see you soon. Thanks.